It is BBC Newcastle, Radio for the North East morning, and thank you very much for your company. 10:20. Last week for International Men's Day, we decided to put together a special programme looking at perhaps the most worrying issue facing men in our area. The fact that more men take their own lives here than anywhere else in the country. We wanted to know why that's the case and how we could change things. The first part of the show was given over to two men, Michael and Martin, talking about their lives. The reaction to their chat was nothing like we've had on this programme before, to be honest with you. It is still available on BBC Sounds if you'd like to listen back. It's really something. Because of the response, we asked both men to come in and discuss the reaction we and they have had to their appearance. Now, bear in mind, they were complete strangers. They didn't know each other at all. First up is Martin Bailey, a teacher who spoke about how close he came to ending his life almost 10 years ago. I asked him how he'd felt about coming in to talk about something so personal with someone he didn't know.
We were complete strangers prior to going on air last week. I think what was lovely was that it felt completely natural. I thought we'd been chatting for about 20 minutes or so and then realised that we'd been talking for an hour without realising. It's lovely to feel that way, to feel that you can be open with someone that you've never met before, but to share quite intimate parts of your life with someone was very humbling and rewarding experience. To have a complete stranger to open up in that way is not something that is easy, and of course there was nerves and anxiety, but I do feel very passionately about it being something that we do need to change the culture and do need to get people sort of speaking and opening up about.
And it's fair to say there has been a pretty huge reaction to that interview.
Yeah, it's been lovely. It's been lovely hearing from yourselves, sort of the response that you've had, but certainly on a personal level, I've had an awful lot of people contact me from both a congratulatory point of view, but I suppose more importantly, the people who have contacted to say how much they've related to it, either on a personal level or because of family and friends who have experienced similar things to what I've gone through.
Also on a very, very personal level, actually, your dad and your sister listened to the interview. And that isn't something necessarily that you expected to happen, was it?
No, it wasn't. I'd been at work when the interview was on, coming in from work, turning phone on to hear that the first two messages were from my dad and my sister and that they had tuned in and listened. It meant an awful lot to us. It's something that's now, 9-10 years ago. And of course, like a lot of families, you don't necessarily want to shout those dark moments sort of from the rooftop. They want to maybe keep things in-house a little bit more. So to hear that they had listened, to hear that they were proud meant an awful lot to me. Dad's son of a miner, he did his national service, was in the police force for the best part of 30 years, and that background, like a lot of people will be able to relate to in the North East, is not necessarily one that screams openness of feelings. Very lucky and proud that I had a dad that stepped up when tragic things happened in my life. But like a lot of sort of fathers and sons in the North East, probably talking and sharing of emotions is not something that's been a natural sort of strength of ours. So to have that acceptance, to have that acknowledgement that he had tuned in, that he had listened, that he is proud, meant an awful lot.
But I know what has been most surprising is the amount of messages that you have had from total strangers.
Some just sort of saying thank you for putting that openness sort of there, but I suppose
to know that they're not alone, I guess.
To know that they're not alone,
yeah.
But yes, so I've had quite a number of strangers contact me saying that they've had brothers, sons who sadly have taken their own life. But I suppose, one that really, really stands out, early hours of Friday morning, I woke to a message that had been sent about 2:25 a.m. I'd had it on Twitter for a complete stranger and somebody who was clearly maybe not in the best of places at that time. And it remembered listening to the interview on Radio Newcastle between Michael and I earlier in the week. And that interview had sort of given him strength to realise that he wasn't alone, that this wasn't feelings that only he was experiencing, that other people feel these things too, and that actually, rather than maybe going down one particular path, the path he was going to go down was right tomorrow morning, a little bit like what Michael had advocated. It was maybe joining a running club, finding some groups where actually I can talk to people and open up, and just really wanted to say thank you. And, it was lovely to wake up to that message and think you'd made an impact on someone's life in that particular way.
Made a difference for sure. Do you think as well part of it, a lot of people commented to us that it wasn't just the honesty, it was the humour, it was the fact that you were both just a couple of normal blokes from the North East opening up to each other and you weren't worried about judgment.
It's normalising those conversations between two men where you can be in the pub, you can be in the car, you can be going to the football match, whatever it is, that actually we want it to become a normal thing for sort of men to talk open. And unfortunately that stigma does exist. I was looking through the the national press over the last couple of days. In my opinion, like a horrific article in a leading paper that was like criticising the men on this year's series of I'm a Celebrity for showing emotion and crying and stuff like that. And I just think we've still got this culture where that is what is being portrayed in the media, that it's almost sort of wrong for men to be showing emotion and so
showing that they're human.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that you talked about when you were chatting to Michael, I thought, wow, what a really good point that you've made there, and hopefully struck a chord with a lot of people, was the fact that employers shouldn't dismiss people who have got mental health issues in the past or in the present.
Yeah.
And say, no, I'm not going to give them a job. Because actually, you made a point about the fact that they're probably going to be the most hardworking and the most committed people when it comes to doing a job.
Totally, and I certainly, if I look back to sort of my own situation, it was probably one of the things that actually created the most fear. Like almost like, how are you going to rebuild your life from this point when you have absence on your record related to mental health? And it probably made us stay in the existing job longer than what I probably should have really done, because the amount of people that I've met who, have had to leave jobs, had time off work, have really suffered in whatever field, all those who literally worked a breaking point, so to speak, they've gone above and beyond. They're some of the, the hardest working people out there. And it was certainly one of the things that, of the messages I've received, one of those sentences that people picked up on more than anything. Thank you, Martin, for saying that. Thank you for speaking out. I truly and honestly believe in that, and I hope that employers listening will think exactly the same. But I totally understand and get for people who are struggling and maybe, from a professional point of view, know in their heart that they maybe need to step away from the job that they're in, but that complete and utter fear that exists around having that as a mark on their attendance records due to anxiety, depression, whatever.
And we're going to talk to your employer in just a second. Jane's here in the studio. You are a hard worker. You are working an awful lot, doing an awful lot of fantastic stuff, aren't you? So what you went through doesn't stop you doing a fantastic job, whether it be teaching in school, whether it be out and about around the world, doing all the other stuff that you do.
Yeah, it took time to rebuild. It doesn't happen overnight, but I hope that, my story does act as an inspiration to anybody who's having tough times. I couldn't have predicted 10 years ago that I would be doing what I'm doing now, but I'm so glad I took the decisions I did to slowly and gradually rebuild life again. And, now 10 years on, I'm in a fantastic place. Being open and honest is the key, though, speaking out to head teachers, colleagues, whoever it might be, and not being afraid to say, no, I can't do that. I haven't got time to do that. I haven't done that. The world's not going to end because you say no to somebody.
And this morning we're revisiting a guest we heard from last week. Martin Bailey was one of two men, Martin and Michael, who had never met but agreed to come in and discuss why they thought North East men are the most likely in the country to take their own lives. Their conversation was put on the air as part of a special programme we put together for International Men's Day. And the reaction it got was really unexpected and quite phenomenal, to be honest with you. Listening to it was Martin's boss, Jane Davis. She's been the head teacher at Lanchester EP School in County Durham for 15 years. I asked her why, when she read Martin's application, which mentioned his breakdown, she wasn't put off the idea of giving him a job.
To me, there are times people with mental health problems are the hardest workers. They give themselves a hard time, really, because they expect so much of themselves. It didn't make any difference. Martin was very open in his application that he'd had time off and that he'd resigned from his previous post. And the reasons why, that didn't come into it for me when we were interviewing. You could see his expertise and what he was capable of, the massive potential that he had as well.
Because it might be something that, a number of employees listening now or in the North East, they might see that on an application and think, oh no, I don't want to deal with that. I haven't got the time, I haven't got the expertise, but obviously something that it just didn't put you off.
No, it didn't. But I think you're right. I think there is still a lot of fear behind mental health because it's that unseen illness. If a member of staff is off with a broken bone, you've got a time span on when they're going to come back. With mental health, you don't have that. I think our school has a very positive and open culture in school, and that we do talk a lot. So I think thanks to Martin, we do in school.
Really? Do you think that's made a big difference?
Oh, without a doubt, yes. Because I think people... I think there's still a culture of being honest about that you are struggling with anxiety or you are struggling with some form of depression. People aren't as open and honest about that as they may be other illnesses. We've definitely overcome that in our school. Since Martin sort of shared his background story, really, what he'd gone through. Staff have gone to him. They feel that they too can be very open and honest about it. I had one member of staff ring me at 8 o'clock in the morning, just said, "Jane, I don't think I can come in today. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just can't come in." I said, "Just drive, let's meet for a coffee and we'll talk things through." So we just met for a coffee and I sent them home. I said, "You just need some time, just have some time." And I'm not a soft touch. I like to think that I'm a caring human being who kind of puts the well-being of the staff. If you've got happy staff, you've got a happy team and you've got happy children. I like to think that that's what we have in school.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? When you're in a school, you are dealing with these little people,
yes,
who are like sponges, aren't they?
Are.
And they pick up on things. They're so intuitive,
yes,
kids.
They're very astute.
They'll know if there's something not quite right with their teacher.
They do, and what I say to staff is, however hard it is, that there are times when we just walk through that classroom door, no matter what you're going through, share it with me, share it with others. But once you're in that classroom, you're an actor, really. You're there for the children. Those 30 little eager faces who, to them, there's never anything wrong with you at all.
Well, I think that culture you described with the fact that, you would be more than happy if a staff wasn't in the right place to do their job. Just take some time, go home and get better, basically.
That's right.
Yeah,
we're all human. Some of us have big things in our lives that affect us. Some of us, it may just be a small thing that we just need some time just to take stock. A lot of schools are losing their good staff because they just feel that they can't cope. So yes, it's trying to have that work-life balance. We've just this year introduced into our school a family day where staff can take a day throughout the year just to spend with their family. And that may be looked down on because of the number of holidays that you have. However, there are some things that you just can't plan for, whether it's weddings, funerals, children's plays. They are within the term time. We've introduced that. The governors were in total agreement with that, felt it was a real positive thing for the school.
Yeah. Is it something that you have been through? Mental ill health, is that something that you have personally had to deal with?
Yes, I mean, it's an interesting one because a few staff have commented that they feel it's probably because I've got more empathy for them. When I was in my first job at teaching, as a young teacher, very sadly, my first child died at the age of 9 months. So a huge trauma to go through. Yes, I suffered. I nursed him from being 3.5 months, knowing that he had a terminal illness and knowing that he would die before his first birthday. They were tough times, very. And you're talking about sort of 28 years ago, so, the culture was very different. I was very fortunate that I had some wonderfully supportive family, brilliant friends, and a fabulous husband. We got through it together. He had a genetic illness. All of our children, they had a 1 in 4 chance of being affected, something called spinal muscular atrophy. There's different types of it. Matthew had type 1, so any child we had would always have type 1. I lost my father-in-law the following year. I had a cancer scare and missed my father-in-law's funeral. We went through hell, really. And looking back, I don't know how we did it, but you just get on with it. Or that was the way that I managed it. I did have time off work. My employers at the time were very supportive of what I was going through. I then fell pregnant after a few years, and sadly that baby was also affected with type 1 SMA. So we had made the decision. We had a CVS test and I terminated that pregnancy, which went against everything, all my religious beliefs. I felt I couldn't bring a baby into the world knowing it would die before its first birthday. Then we thankfully went on to have 2 wonderful girls, Rebecca and Anna. When Rebecca was born, she was a bit of a miracle baby, really. We just never thought that we'd ever sort of have a healthy child. And I think Matthew, he would have been 27 now, and he's still a big part of our lives. Through nursing him, through looking after him, and through the wonderful people that we met who were going through similar things even now, it has made a difference to my outlook on life. It definitely changed my priorities. I think I became a more caring person, understanding of what other people were going through. And I think sometimes it does take trauma in your own life to actually sort of have more of an understanding of what other people go through as well.
Absolutely, and that empathy, like you say, is such an important part, clearly, of your job and of making the culture at Lanchester EP. You said, Martin, actually, before we started to record this, your family say it's almost like you found where you belong.
Yeah, that was one of the lovely things that came out last week. My dad and sister said to me, it's you're finally sort of where you're meant to be, and that being at Lanchester's then created the catalyst for all the other lovely things that have happened in life. And I've got to thank Jane, but all other colleagues, governors, everyone associated with the school for creating that culture. Happiness is such an important part of that.
Since listening to Martin last week, I felt a sense of pride. I mean, I know I was going to say just an employee, and I don't mean that. I did feel a sense of pride. You put so much into them, into making sure that they're the best they can be in the classroom. You want them to be happy. We are unusual in our school in that we have quite a lot of male teachers.
It's unusual for primary schools,
Very,
isn't
yes,
it?
Yes. It's just one of those things just happened. But I think that's a positive because the men do talk very openly as well. The most important thing to me is we have a laugh, and we have had applications from staff who have been successful in their application, who have had time off with anxiety and with mental health. Just doesn't come into it for me. If the support network is there, if the right ethos and atmosphere is there, and you treat people like human beings with feelings and emotions, then you get the best out of them.
And that's Jane Davis, who's the head teacher at Lanchester EP School in County Durham, talking about employing Martin Bailey, who was one of the two men who was so open and honest, chatting to each other last week as part of International Men's Day. If you have been affected by anything that you've heard this morning, there is help and advice available through the BBC's Action Line website, bbc.co.uk/Action Line. And again, if you would like to listen to Martin and Michael's initial chat, if you weren't able to do that last Tuesday, it's available on the BBC Sounds app on my BBC Sounds page. Just Google Lisa Shaw, BBC Newcastle, and you'll find it there.